On this week's episode of Whitetail Cribs, we're visiting with Brad Hruska. Brad is a 6th grade math teacher by trade, but on his free time, you can catch him traveling across the Midwest, chasing whitetails. Follow along as he shares some of his most memorable hunts with family and friends. To thank our subscribers, we'll be giving away another Whitetail Cribs t-shirt to one lucky subscriber. Guess the score of Brad's Ohio muzzleloader buck to the nearest eighth of an inch to be eligible. If you guys enjoy the episode, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe.
Hey guys, what's going on? Come on in. Say hi, guys. I'm Brad Hruska. I'm a 6th grade math teacher at a local school here in Hermitage, Pennsylvania. And this is Camden, and this is Tenley. And we want to thank you guys for coming to check things out. So come on downstairs. So this is my whitetail room. You could see that it used to be my whitetail room until we have a 5 and 3-year-old, and this has become our whitetail room / kid playroom. So we got everything cleaned up, and we're excited for you guys to be here today. But I just want to kind of show you guys around of some of the deer I've been able to harvest and get the last probably 12 years. And when I first started hunting here in Pennsylvania at 12 years old, it took me about 4 years to finally get that first deer. So a lot of these deer I was blessed to take about probably when I was 26, 25 years old to now, so the last 13 years. So it's been an awesome 12, 13 years. So right here, I want to start with a buck that I took last year in Missouri. And what it was we drive all through the night, 12 hours. We had a couple leases, and this is actually the first deer I've ever killed with a bow first night on stand. So it was an awesome hunt. The weather was perfect. It was November 1st, actually, and we saw great rutting activity that night. And our expectations were high for the Midwest. And when we got out there, I saw 3 or 4 shooters, nothing close. And then right before shooting hours, he snuck in behind us. My buddy tapped me on the shoulder. We put the lighting up on the camera, and I shot him at 8 yards with a bow. So the shot, it's happened a couple of times. And I know a lot of you guys out there have probably had the same shot. Not spine, but just kind of like high shoulder. And it just was enough to knock him off his feet and put him down. So that's actually happened on a couple bucks I've had where it wasn't a spine shot, but it was just high enough where you clip something and it puts him right down right there. So that was my Missouri last year archery. This right here, this is a deer that I killed in Kansas public ground. So again, all my mounts are mounts because they're special. And after sitting here the last couple of days thinking about everyone has a story with just the guys. This story right here is a public ground, Kansas. And I used to have a lease, and the lease ran out, and my brother was like, let's go hunt public ground. And this was about 5 years ago. So this is kind of before the hunting public and public ground got exploded. You know what I mean? So what we did is we took me, my brother, my very good friend, and a buddy, and we all went out. There was 4 of us. We drove out 15 and a half hours. My brother-in-law went, and my brother-in-law went just to film. So we got out there, and this deer is so special because this is not only my first public land buck, but we put 42 miles on. We put hours and hours of just scouting, walking all over the place. And I killed him on the next to last day at 10 o'clock. I rattled him in. And it was awesome because the footage was there. The setup was there. We scouted, we hung. We were able to make it happen on a great public land buck. And it was just a special hunt again. This guy is another Kansas buck. Again, I mount him because it's a first or something. So this is actually my first Kansas archery buck. We went out, my brother-in-law went out, and him and I were the only two that went. So we drove 15 and a half hours. And again, on a teacher's schedule, I don't get to take 5 days off, 6 days off, 7 days off. I have to take 1 or 2, and I have to make it happen quick. So on this deer, we drove straight through the night. We stopped to get some breakfast. And when we got out of breakfast, we went straight to the lease. And when we got to the lease, wouldn't you know it, a shooter walked right in front of our stand. So we're kicking ourselves because, of course, that's the way it happens. So the next morning, we didn't see anything that day. The next morning, this was the first telltale sign of rut activity in Kansas. And I saw him with 2 doe. I grunted, snort, wheezed, and he left the doe and he came in on a mission. And it was awesome to see him come in all bristled up. And I shot him at 12 yards with a bow. And again, coming from PA, we think 20 feet high. We think that we have to be up real high in a tree stand and everything like that. Out in Kansas, the stand was probably 9 feet off the ground. There was two of us, and it was the only tree that we could get a stand in. And of course, doesn't look up, nothing like that. And it was just a blessing to be able to get him at 12 yards, and he ran it probably about 100 yards. So, and here are just some of my European mounts that are from Pennsylvania and Ohio that I've been blessed to take over the last couple of years. But you guys know in Argos, in about 2011, 2012, some properties in Ohio, EHD hit pretty hard. So I was hunting a property in Northwest Ohio where my wife's from, and I used to get just old mature deer on camera. This buck was the biggest buck I got on camera that year, and I was just blessed to take him. And you can see he's massy and he's got junk and stuff. And I'm not sure, again, this was before age was a big thing for me and everything, but just like being able to shoot the biggest deer I had on camera that year. And it's pretty crazy that looking back, how bad and low the deer population was that year. Again, to me, I know some of you guys out there would pass this deer, but to me, this is a great PA deer. And I took this actually, again, stayed up all night the night before, was checking out this property on a map, and I was like, it was so thick and nasty that there was one spot that was open, and I was like, I'm going to go to that spot tomorrow. It was warm, days that you didn't think it was going to happen. And right after work, I got out of my classroom, went to this spot, and it was only about 2 minutes from work, so it was easy. Got up there, climbed, and if you notice, like all these stories go with, I was hanging and hunting or I was climbing. So we have all these stands all over all these properties, and for some reason, it happens when we go hang and hunt somewhere else. So again, I put the tree stand up, got set up, and right before dark, he came in following a doe, and I was able to shoot him with my bow at like 12 yards. So another cool story. This hunt right here was just me going out by myself, but I would have never done it if I didn't get pushed by my buddies and stuff. So this was the most miserable hunt. It was 0 degrees with 30-mile-an-hour winds, and I was in Kansas on a lease that was 15 hours away, so I just went in and just did my thing. No trees, and I'm sitting in a pop-up blind on a tripod in the middle of the field. So as I'm praying, wishing I don't die of frostbite or whatever like that, in the evening, I'm sitting there, and I've been out all day long, and I had a couple good bucks come in. I look up, and about 500 yards away, a doe pops out. And I'm sitting there, and I'm looking out the blind, and all of a sudden, the doe looks at me from 500 yards, and I'm like, there's no way. And I thought I was hallucinating because I've been out in this cold all day long, and all of a sudden, 3 more doe came out. And then they're looking at me. I'm like, there's no way they see me from 500 yards away. So they ended up coming in, and as they came in from, Kansas, little fingers, from a finger, 15 does started filing in. And I look up, and out of the middle of the woods, he pops out at 200 yards. So I shoot, and I put the crosshairs up just on the high shoulder, and I know I hit him hard, and he just hopped. I reloaded, shot again, and by that time, I don't even know what happened. The blind fell apart, so when my second shot, I actually broke the blind on the second shot, but good thing I hit him on the first shot. So over here, now I call this my PA wall, and as you can tell, the difference, okay? This deer is special because this is the first time I self-filmed myself kill a buck or kill anything. And what's crazy for all you guys out there that are self-filming now, you guys are so much more educated than what we were when we started. I think I had a Sony Handycam. I had a $20 tree arm that would fall over every time. And I never even heard of a second angle before. So I took my camera out. I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, this is awesome. There's a shooter buck in front of me. Then I was like, holy cow, I got my camera, so I better film it. So I turned my camera on and I'm filming it. And next thing you know, at 32 yards, which again is crazy, is probably my longest bow shot ever at 32 yards. I hit him and he ran in and he only went 60 yards. But again, I got him mounted because one, probably at the time, one of my biggest PA deer, and two, just the cool story of the self-film, the whole thing, because he's actually the first deer that I ever got a trail cam photo of and saw. So now let's talk about hill country. So this buck is actually, not only is it my first rack buck, it's my first mount. And this was a hunt where I know everybody knows those feelings where the weather's right, the wind's right, and it just feels right. And you're sitting at work and you got this knot in your stomach and you're like, man, I think something's going to happen. So I was actually student teaching at this one place. And the whole day I couldn't eat. I was just sick to my stomach. And I was like, man, I know something's going to happen tonight. So I go up to my camp. It's about an hour away in Venango County, We've had it for like 65 years. My great grandfather built it. It's actually a trailer added on with another section to it. Still running, so it's still working. And this was the first big deer that my group of guys took off the property. And when I shot this, again, this is that second deer I was saying. It wasn't a spine shot with the bow, but it was high shoulder, and it just dropped him. And again, I'm 23 years old, and every other deer I shot ran. And the theory is at the camp, if it runs and you don't see it go down, we ain't finding it. So I just start Robin Hooding everything, and I just start pulling out. He's crawling. I'm trying to shoot again because the last thing I want to do is have him run down that hill. And because we know what happens when they go down the hill. And this deer, after I killed it, my good friend, my brother, two buddies came running down out of their tree stands. Again, like I said, when it's the first big deer as a group that you take, everybody is part of that big deer. And so they came down. One guy had his backpack unzipped. He lost everything from 100 yards to me. It all fell out. We're hugging. You know how, I mean, you guys can all relate when that first big deer, you're hugging, high-fiving. Next thing you know, we're just laying there and then taking it all in. And then we go, and the fun part in hill country is the drag out. But again, I have this picture on my desk at school. It's with my brother and my three best friends. And it's something that's never going to be replaced. This is a deer that just, my dad was actually in the camp cooking. So like, there's just so many memories that go with this deer. And it's awesome to be able to just bring it to life and come down here and hang out with it. So, but now here comes, this is my biggest deer. So I had a 2-year run where I shot this deer and the deer over here. And when I mean luck, this deer is just luck. This was plain out luck. This was a muzzleloader, Ohio, again, Northwest Ohio. But the thing that's special about this deer is I wasn't supposed to kill this deer. So during archery season, I had probably 20 different encounters with big bucks, and I couldn't get it done. And I remember sitting in the stand on the last day of archery out there that I was able to hunt, like I think it was the middle of November, and a 7-point came running in, and I'm like, I'm blasting him, I don't care. And again, you all can relate. I pulled back on this 7-point 4 times, all within 15 yards, and I could not get a shot at him. When he walked away, I think I cried. I think I cried in my tree stand because I was like, you got to be kidding me. It was one of those years where it just could not happen. A month later, the first Friday of inline season, I took off. I went out to Bryan, Ohio, where my family's from, and the farmer was like, go there, and I'm going to go take a walk over here. And wouldn't you know it, he comes running across this field. I go to scope him. My muzzleloader turns black. I was like, oh my goodness. And there was a standing cornfield, and I just saw him at the last second shot, and I dropped him. Literally, his nose was in the corn. And I sat there, and I called every person I had, and for some reason, there was no service at that one spot on that farm. Nobody picked up. Nobody answered. I'm hugging myself. I'm jumping up and down. I'm screaming. And when I mean, like, I thought he was 130 inches. I was like, I just killed a 130-inch buck, and I was like, this is the biggest buck of my life, and I had nobody to enjoy with. So the farmer came over, and when he came over, he's sitting there, and he's like, oh my goodness. And I was like, I know. I was like, I started hugging him. Meanwhile, he's not a toucher. So I'm hugging this guy in the middle of a field, and I had nobody else to share it with. So this is just a cool hunt that, again, wasn't supposed to happen, but God does things in ways that we don't understand. And he was blessed me with this deer when I should have shot a 90-inch 7-point. But this one right here is actually my first bow buck. And I was 17 years old. Killed him with fingers because my uncle was a very traditional archer. This deer was awesome because, one, I messed up on the shot, so I learned about a gut shot. I learned that you never give up on a deer, and I learned that my dad was just special because we took off the next day from school. We walked and walked all night. We backed out, and then we didn't give up and we went back on it. And wouldn't you know, we found this deer almost 2.5 miles from where I shot him, and it was awesome because it was just a moment I got to spend with my dad. No school. We found this deer, and I drugged this through a cornfield into my dad's 82 Ford that my dad had for years. And it's just one of those things that will never go away. And then this right here is back-to-back years with this guy over here. This is, again, if you would have told me 12 years ago that I would have hunted the Midwest and Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, all that stuff, I would have just laughed at you because I never thought it was going to happen. So this deer, we get out there, we scout, there's a ton of sign, we hang a stand, a setup up there, take my buddy out, hang his stand, all that, and then we go back the next day. So the next morning, I have never seen, this is my first Midwest rutting activity, and we had a doe come in right at light and pee in front of us. And I was like, holy cow, this could be probably the most special day we've ever had, Brian. So again, he's filming me like this. All of a sudden, he comes walking in, and I'm like, Brian, shoot her. And he's 25 yards away. Brian's filming me, but he's looking like this as he's filming. So all you see is the top of the trees, and you don't see anything. So he's like, Brad, I'm on him. Sweet. Oh my gosh, you got to shoot him. And I'm like, I got him, Brian. You ready? He's like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready. So all you hear is bang, and then you hear the deer running off, and that's all you see. But again, when you're from PA, we don't see deer. We didn't see deer like this. So this deer, we taped him out, and he was actually 152 and that would be a pretty cool story. That again, shooting these deer back to back, I was like, this is just a dream, because coming from PA, we don't see deer like this, let alone shoot deer like this. So again, all these are awesome. All these have been a blessing that I treasure forever. But this one right here, man, he's ugly. We got 100 pictures of him. He was on our property that we just purchased, but this is actually the first deer I shot without my dad. So my dad passed away in June from cancer, 8 long years. And if anybody's ever lost a family member with cancer, you know the trials and tribulations that go along with cancer. So I lost my dad years ago because he stopped hunting. And then I lost my dad physically in June because he just couldn't fight anymore. So when I shot this deer, my dad was always the first guy I called, and it was just a special hunt. I actually filmed this deer, filmed a lot of these deer, but I was on this deer for 10 minutes. He sat there eating in the clover kill plot we planted, and I wasn't going to shoot him because I wasn't ready to. But sometimes God, again, puts things in front of you and blessings in front of you that you take, and I took my time, made a great shot. He ran 100 yards, and I just got to sit there with my dad for a little bit because that's what it's all about. So again, one of those things where this isn't 150 inches, but it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter anymore because it's the memory that I have of this deer that will live on forever. So pretty cool story there. And then the last thing I just want to share with you guys is a piece of property we were able to purchase this year. So we have 72 acres in PA. Again, if you told me that I'd be tilling ground and cutting down trees on a property that I own, I would have laughed at you, because it's something I prayed for every night as a kid growing up. And my prayer was to take my dad out on my own piece of ground and get him one more buck, because my dad's biggest deer was probably about a 90-inch 8-point that we have mounted that is awesome. And it was awesome at the time, but I wanted him to experience that one more thrill. So I never got to take him out and do that. But something else that I'm involved in is outdoor ministry we call Driven Purpose Outdoors, and I'm co-founder on it with another 9 guys. And what it is, it's a ministry where we use the outdoors to bring God to people. And in this ministry, we have something called Bows and Bibles. And what Bows and Bibles is, it gets kids, gets families, gets men and women involved where they can meet with us. We go shoot bows, we do devotionals, and we do that during the summertime. So if you're local and you're interested in Bows and Bibles, reach out to us at Driven Purpose Outdoors on Facebook. And I also have 2 bucks right now at the taxidermist that we're going to head to and tell you about too. So I'm excited to show you guys those. Hi, we're here at Uran's Taxidermy. This is one I got last year out in Northwest Ohio. And what this one was it was a muzzleloader kill. So it was opening day of muzzleloader. Aaron and I took the morning off. We went and glassed because we just didn't want to spook anything. So at 1 o'clock, I went back and I snuck in. I had about like a half a mile walk into the woods, and then from there, probably about another quarter of a mile back to the spot. Well, wouldn't you know it, as soon as I get up to the tree edge, I bump out 5 deer. And any hunter, you're like, crap, okay? So then I was like, you know what, I'm going to keep going. So then as I keep going, I'm literally 70 yards away from the stand, and like 9 deer bump out of there. And out there is nothing but little patches of woods. And I was like, I'm done. I was like, I put my head in my shirt. I walked up the tree stand, and I was like, I'm just going to sit here because nothing's going to happen. I kicked out every single deer. Well, the bedding, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at hunt stand. I'm looking at the map, and I'm like, so I'm looking on the map and I'm looking on the property, and I can see that there's still a couple 100 yards extra of some thicket in there that I knew could hold a deer. So about 30 minutes later, I'm looking, and I see just a speck of a tine about 80 yards behind me in this thicket. And all of a sudden this yearling pops out. And honestly, this is the first time I've seen it. I've read about it, I've heard about it, but he came out following a yearling on January 5th, and he was tending her, you know what I mean? So I knew that could happen. I never saw it happen. And I got an 85-yard shot at him, and when I shot him, he actually ran right to me and died underneath the tree stand. So, I mean, it was really, really, really cool. And then it brings me to the last guy from this year. So Justin has it taken care of already. So we have pictures and everything that you'll see from it. But this buck is something that none of the other bucks can even live up to. And again, after listening to all the podcasts this year, all the great guys that with the great advice, because again, with all these podcasts, us average hunters can take in all this knowledge and without ever meeting anybody, just listening over and over again. So the reason this deer is so special is for the whole week, I game planned with my brothers, my buddies. We game planned. I knew what I wanted to do, and I went and did it. I went and scouted it, went and hung and hunted that evening, and I knew I wasn't going to see anything that evening just because I kicked everything out, scouting and all that. But wouldn't you know it, I was in the stand for 35 minutes. The sign told me where to be, and he came in with another shooter buck chasing these 4 or 5 doe, and I was able to put an arrow to him at basically 8 steps. It's actually my best archery buck. He's really tall, and again, just a great ending of the year. Again, truly blessed, and I couldn't thank these guys enough for coming into my house and seeing all the deer and just being able to reminisce on all the stories. So thank you guys, and God bless.